Hello, good people, and welcome to Hillbilly Cat History, Karate Friends. We're back in the dojo, and we're going to hear more about Ed Parker and from Ed Parker today. And we're going to hear stories from Ed Parker's family. And we're going to do all that when we come back from this song that brings us back into the dojo because it tells us how Elvis earned his first black belt. And this is The Crucible of a Warrior. Hi, Keith. Hi, Gunn. Thank you so much for being here.
Feel a flame, hammer in hand, carved out his name. 16 and airborne boots in the dirt, jumping through walls, unbaptized and hurt. Karate in Japan, fists like steel, champion of honor, deadly and real. Sensei, a warrior's no room for doubt. You wear the G or you train and come back. Your eyes a crucible, baby, not a showbiz belt. You bleed, you break, you feel a warrior's spell. Elvis hit the mat, but he rolls with a roll. Sneer in his soul, ready for war. It's burning, burning, burning through the pain. Crucible of a warrior, forged in Hank's domain. 30 throws, not dances, a fight. Bones to set, boards shattered on sight. Shudo elbow, fingertip flame. Every strike a prayer, every cane a name. 6 weeks of fire, no cameras, no fame. Just sweat and bruises, no one maintain. Saw came in, fist like a storming set. Put him down, break ribs if it's known. It's a crucible, baby, not a velvet crown. You fall, you crawl, but you don't stay down. Elvis hit the mat, but he rose with the raw. Sneer in his soul, ready for war. It's burning, burning, burning through the pain. Crucible of a warrior, forged in Hank's domain. All eyes watched the king that day. Would he crumble or would he stay? But Hank saw it, war in his eyes. Not a quitter, but a fighter who rise. From Hollywood lights to dojo dust, Elvis earned it not on fame but trust. No stunt, no script, just grit and bruise. Black belt truth, not a headline roots. A crucible, baby, not a stage or set. You earn every inch, every beat of the sweat. Elvis hit the mat, but he rolls with a roar. Sneer in his soul, ready for war. It's burning, burning, burning through the pain. Crucible of a warrior. They burned through the fire, broke through the fear. The dojo of legends and kings stood clear. Crucible of a warrior. Elvis was here.
Thank you for gathering here at Hillbilly Cat History, where we remember together and listen for the echoes. And today, we're back in the dojo talking more about Ed Parker and Elvis Presley. I've been watching this little girl who's doing the karate that we can all see right now, and I'm starting to wonder if instead of a black belt, Elvis should have been trying for a purple belt. But let's start the stories today with this guitar that we actually talked about yesterday. And so if you missed the last episode, be sure that you go back into the archives and you check it out because I tell the story about this guitar in a lot more detail. Hi, Linda. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. The important thing about this guitar is that in 1969, Vernon purchased this guitar as a gift for Elvis. Vernon had it highly customized. This is a Gibson guitar. It was not black, but Vernon had it changed to ebony. And he had the inlay of Elvis Presley, the name, put on the fretboard. And he had the Kenpo Karate sticker applied. And some people believe that he had the guitar colored black to honor the black belt that Elvis achieved in Kenpo Karate. And then he gifted this, and Elvis began to use it on stage somewhere around 1971. And he used it until 1973. And then he gave this guitar to a person in the audience, a young man. And his name was Mike Harris, and he was 21 years old. And for some reason, Elvis felt moved in that moment to give him the guitar. And the people who were around said Elvis said something about, "You keep the guitar. I gave it to you for a reason. Someday it will help you out." Or that he mentioned it might be valuable one day. I kind of lean more towards he said it will help you out someday. But the other important thing about this guitar is that the sticker that's applied comes up in another story that's told by David Stanley. And he indicates that he was high one day and was in the room with this guitar alone. And for some reason, determined it would be a good idea to put the Kenpo sticker on here. And he worked really hard to get it exactly perfect. But then after it was done, he decided, before he did it, he wasn't sure whether Elvis would like it or not. But he became convinced afterwards Elvis would dislike it. And he lived in fear until Elvis saw it. And then Elvis told him that it was the greatest thing he'd ever seen and gave David a big hug. And while there might be some emotional truth in that story about the relationship between Elvis and David Stanley, the factual truth of the sticker, that's not there. That sticker was already on this guitar. We know that. We know that it was put on at Guitar City when these changes were made to the guitar. We also know, I think you could look at the sticker and see that a man who was under the influence of anything probably did not put that sticker on there, because it's fairly perfectly placed. And it's lined up exactly as it should be. It was put on there by a professional. David did not put that there. So there are a lot of stories that David tells. He is a fibber. We see other folks tell stories like Marty Lacker or even George Klein. But like with Marty, we see that a lot of the stories are tinged with bitterness or emotional feelings that have come after the stories. Or he remembers things from a very specific perspective, his own. And at what other perspective would he remember anything from? So there are things in his books which are not true, not factually true. Marty ties things together that aren't really tied together, gives explanations for things that are out of time sequence. But he's not lying. He's telling us what he thinks. Marty opens his mouth and this is what comes out. This is the truth inside Marty's head. But when David tells us things, well, he knows that some of these things that he tells us are not true. George Klein as well sometimes can only tell us, all times, can only tell us from his perspective. And he doesn't always connect everything properly. So you could look at some of those things and say they were lies, but they're not. They're George telling us what he believes to be the truth. The same with Billy Smith. Even the things that Billy says that he probably should keep quiet and never have revealed. Billy rarely makes up outright lies. However, he and Marty did make up a big lie about Elvis not being deceased. And they did it as a joke, apparently, but it got out of control. And that's because people believe these individuals who were around Elvis and when they write these books. And that's what's so dangerous when David so openly fibs about something I think he believed he would never be brought up on. Nobody would ever catch this because nobody knew where the guitar was for a long time. And the only other person who knew the story of the sticker was dead. That was Vernon Presley. So David felt in the years before the internet, who could catch him in a lie like this? He knew the actual truth, so he could twist it. And now it's a wonderful little story he tells about Elvis forgiving him. But he did not put the sticker onto this guitar. You can get a better look at the fretboard here and see how amazing the inlay truly is. And Colleen, hi Colleen, thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. She says that she doesn't believe a word of what David Stanley says. Well, he does say some true things. That's the trickiest part about David. He mixes the truth with the untruths. And Gunn says, so David lied. Well, he fibbed. He definitely fibbed. It's up to you to determine if David's lies, I would use that word if you believe that it was malicious that David said that. Or possibly, maybe he'd use the word if he used it only for his own gain, which he probably did. So, I mean, the word might fit, but I'm just pointing out that it's not factual. The truth in that story is not the factual truth. Now, did David have a hallucination while under the influence and believe that he put the sticker on there? I don't know. So that's why I don't like to make judgments about people, but in my estimation, that probably is the correct word. And Linda says that she doesn't believe a good deal of what she hears. You have to sift it all for the actual facts and then understand what is their perspective and would they gain something by promoting something in a different way. David has gained a lot by promoting things in a specific way. And Gunn says that she doesn't think he would dare changing Elvis's guitar, that you don't mess around with other people's belongings. That was kind of the point to his story, that he was outside of his regular judgment zone because he was under the influence of some substance. And Linda says that she believes David lied. And I don't think that's a wrong impression to walk away with. But again, I like us each to make that determination on our own. Now, Ed Parker says, all the time, threats against Elvis reached critical proportions. One of the tours before the last two, when we were in Florida, we were told that there was a nationalist group that was attempting to kill Elvis. They felt by killing him, they could then blackmail other entertainers into paying them large sums of money. There were many times they had bomb threats, but he just went on. We did take precautions, but if it had to happen on stage, what better way to go than in that manner? So Ed is a proponent that if you have to go, you need to go doing what you love. And I think we see this played out in the 1960s. There are several people that are assassinated while they're performing their life's work, which was incredibly important to all of America, if not the world. And those people would be John F. Kennedy, his brother Robert F. Kennedy, and Martin Luther King Jr. Elvis he had not witnessed them all personally, or any of them personally, but he had witnessed them as everyone else in America had witnessed them, and possibly across the globe. But in America, it was a huge deal, those three. And Elvis was glued to the TV during those periods, trying to get news about what had happened. So these thoughts of being killed during his life's work while on stage, these were very real possibilities in Elvis's mind. And not just in his mind. There are real threats. There is still evidence of real threats. And there were times that people came onto the stage and others laugh it off and say these people were just going up to shake Elvis's hand or something, but these people were going up to attack Elvis. There was no other purpose in that. And it happened at least once on stage, but actually it happened multiple times. It just doesn't get reported out there. The one time that does, it was multiple guys at once, but there were other times. That's why he had the security there. It's not like they just stood around all the time. They did stop people from going up on the stage quite often. On screen, we can see Elvis's black G, and you can see that it's used a lot. And it's been washed and worn. It's got the Kenpo karate badge. No pants with this particular outfit. It's just the shirt. How do we know that this is Elvis's Kenpo karate? Well, it came from Jimmy Velvet's collection. Jimmy Velvet was a huge Elvis collector, one of the very first. He bought up a whole lot of stuff right after Elvis passed away. He has no provenance that went with this. So in other words, we don't know who brought this to Jimmy. We don't know how it left Elvis's possession and made it to Jimmy Velvet. So we could question whether it even is Elvis's. But Jimmy Velvet, anything that was in his collection is normally considered to be the real deal, because he would have known who it came from, even if he didn't record it. He was an expert at Elvis stuff, as expert as anybody could be who, didn't live at Graceland. So hopefully this is the real thing that we're looking at on screen. If it's not, many, many people have looked at this same G and have believed that it was Elvis's. And Linda says that she just got her copy of The Colonel and the Boys, the book that I wrote. Thank you so much, Linda. I hope that you find it enjoyable. I think the letter is amazing in and of itself. And there's some details in there about the people who were there at the time. I think a lot of Elvis fans don't know some of those stories about those people. I just kind of bring them up to date to 1960 when the letter was written. And try to put you into that moment and how Elvis might have felt. And in the margins, there are notes that are written in a font I created to mimic Elvis's blocky handwriting that he often used inside the books when he noted things. And those are real Elvis notes. He actually wrote those things in other books, not in my book. But I feel like if he had read my book, he might have noted those things in those same spots. And Linda says she's sure she will enjoy it. I hope that you do. And if anybody else wants to get a copy, you can go below this video, and there's a link to the Amazon website where it's sold. And Ed Parker says, I just think that some of the Secret Service could learn a lot from us. Not me, per se, but the things we did, how we protected Elvis, and the decoys that we used. So Ed tells us that he thinks the people who protect the president could have learned a lot from the group that was protecting Elvis. And he might be right, because there'd been at least one presidential loss within the last decade when when Ed got involved in protecting Elvis, but they had already been protecting Elvis from before, other people. And that they were using certain procedures that he thinks the Secret Service could have used. And that they used decoys, like they would send cars out that people believed Elvis was in, and they would follow the cars. Or they would send a person out dressed as Elvis, and people would follow that person, thinking that it was Elvis. And that would leave the way clear so that Elvis could get away. And of course, nobody would be following him because everybody's following the decoy. Here we can get a better look at that patch that's on the G. And we saw this same symbol in the necklace that Elvis wears that looks exactly like this. It says Kenpo Karate. And Kenpo Karate is the style of karate that Ed teaches. Now, he doesn't teach the classical Kenpo Karate. He teaches American Kenpo Karate, or what I think he sometimes calls international Kenpo Karate. This is a beautiful wooden box with an EP on it. So the piece of jewelry that was in this box was not only custom made for Elvis, the very box was custom made for Elvis. And this is a Kenpo Karate ring. It's sterling silver. There's a sculptural design on the top that is extremely high relief, which means that it's carved deeply into the ring. The figures are nearly completely three-dimensional. And that it's a dragon battling a great cat. Which, if we go back one, we can see that the symbol of Kenpo Karate is a tiger fighting a dragon. And that's what is on the top of this ring is some are saying it's a panther, because there's no stripes. You can't see any stripes on it, but it's probably the tiger from the normal emblem. And this ring was given this ring, here's what the person who owned this ring for a while said. That person was collector Robin Roseanne, who founded All the King's Things, which I believe was a website where you used to be able to purchase items that Elvis owned. I don't think it's around anymore. I believe it's long gone, but she was known to have founded this thing and was once known to have the top, or at least one of the top private Elvis collections in the world. So she was like Jimmy Velvet, only she didn't have a museum per se. At least I don't think she did. That All the King's Things might have been part of a museum. I'm not really sure about Robin. But apparently at some point long before I got into the Elvis circles, she was big in the collection stuff. So when her name is attached to something, it's like Jimmy Velvet's name being attached to it. Not exact provenance, but very, very close. Close enough that most people are going to believe what she believes about any of these objects. And she says this silver ring was crouching with... Let me start over. This silver ring with crouching dragon and panther with the words Kenpo Karate once belonged to and was worn by Elvis Aaron Presley. This ring was awarded to Elvis along with his 4th degree black belt rank card in 1971. So Robin tells us about a fourth degree black belt in 1971. That's also the year he began using the ebony guitar in concert. We know that Vernon went to purchase it in 1969, but some people think Elvis didn't receive it until 1971. And perhaps that's true. Perhaps it was a gift that came with this, that Vernon gave Elvis when he achieved fourth degree black belt. I feel like it was probably given earlier because 2 years is a long time, even though it would have taken some amount of time to customize the guitar. But I believe the amount of time to customize the guitar would have maxed out at like 6 weeks. So I feel more like Elvis received that guitar like Christmas of 1969, birthday of 1970, Christmas of 1970, somewhere in there. But he does get this ring in connection to this fourth degree black belt. And in some ways, that makes a lot of sense that it's a gift because it's sterling silver. And sterling silver is a precious metal. I love sterling silver, personally, to tell you the truth. I like silver and silver jewelry. But I like it mostly because it was fairly affordable. Over the last, say, 6 months, silver and gold have increased dramatically in price. But silver is, compared to gold, far more affordable. So this is something that a normal person could have afforded to have made for Elvis. If you had this ring made today, I would estimate you could get it done. The silver itself would cost less than $100. So you'd really pay for the artistry. You might pay $500 for this ring. I don't know, maybe $1,000. But that's today. So this ring wouldn't have been, it would have been expensive for a normal person. But it wouldn't have been so expensive they couldn't have bought it as a gift for someone that they really, really cared about. And Gunn says that Elvis didn't give away sterling silver. That's right. So this was given to Elvis, not from him to somebody else, but it was given to him to celebrate the fact that he had gotten this fourth degree black belt. And it's saying it was awarded. So I believe that Ed Parker actually gave this to him. Like Ed Parker had it made and gave to him. And I'm going to show you why. But let's get a better look at the ring. This is looking straight down on top of it. And it's kind of hard to make out, but there's a dragon across the top. And there's a panther or a tiger across the bottom. And then it says Kenpo Karate. This is a view from the side. So again, it takes a second to orient your eyes. But you'll see the dragon. And it's over top of the panther. And in this view, it actually looks much more dramatic. Like the panther is somewhat frightened, but ready to attack. Hi, Pat. Thank you so much for coming. Appreciate seeing you here. Now we're looking at the ring from the other side. And this letter, and I know this will be hard for you to read, but it says, "Dear Elvis, just a short note to say it was nice talking with you and that you will have a rapid recovery." So Elvis, he must have had an injury of some sort. And then the letter says, "Enclosed, please find your membership card indicating your new rank. I have dated it the night I witnessed your performance. Please attach wallet-sized photo of yourself to the space marked with an X. I will be sending your certificate plaque. I think that says Constitution, etc. in the next few days. And then the card is actually at the bottom. And again, it's hard to see. And really, the image itself is not a very good image. So I'm not able to actually blow it up to make it look. It just gets worse and worse as it gets bigger. But this is a letter from Ed Parker to Elvis about the 4th degree black belt that he earned. This letter is dated March 26th. Doesn't have a year, but we know it's 71. So this is March 26, 1971. And he probably saw the performance that he references a few days before, sometime earlier in March 1971. And he mentions that he's going to send a certificate, a plaque, and some other stuff. I think he might have sent the ring. Because I think that's where the ring comes from. According to Robin, it's attached to this earning of this black belt. And it's not a piece of jewelry that I think Elvis himself would have purchased. He would have purchased that in 24 karat gold. Now, he might have really loved that ring and the style, and he would, but if he had purchased it or had it made, it would have been in a more precious metal. More than likely 24 karat gold. Maybe 14 karat gold. Possibly 14 because it would not bend or mush as easy. And when you got all these high relief characters, you know, you don't want them to mush together. Now we see a couple of beautiful ladies on the screen. And these two ladies, they are Sherry and Beth. Okay, on the left is Sherry. Her name is Sherry Pula. And on the right is Beth Uali. I'm probably butchering their last names. They're Hawaiian last names, I believe. Like 99% sure they're Hawaiian last names. Because these two are Hawaiian. They are Ed Parker's daughters. So if you remember the picture that we've seen so many times in previous episodes of Ed and his beautiful family in 1960, I think he has 4 children in that picture. These are 2 of the girls. And on April 23rd or April 24th, 1973, I'm not sure which one. I am sure that Elvis performed in Anaheim, California, near Disneyland on both of those nights. I'm not sure which one of those nights Elvis sent a limousine, and he brought the Parker family, including these 2 ladies, when they were young girls, back when Sherry, over on the left, was 6 years old. And Beth would have been 14. Elvis sent a limousine to the Parker house in Pasadena, California, and he collected the Parker family, and he brought them to his concert. And Gunn says that it does look like a panther to her on the ring, and that she believes Elvis appreciated any gift he got, cheap or expensive. He absolutely did. And he even kept 1 or 2 jewelry boxes, maybe even more, of what most people would look at and think, this is some cheap jewelry. But every piece that he had in those boxes had some extremely special memory to him. And in one of those boxes was a set of cufflinks, sterling silver cufflinks, colored gold. And I think he had received those cufflinks when he was a teenager, when he graduated high school from his upstairs neighbor, and I've got a video about it on the channel. So if you guys would like to see that video, just head out to the channel, which you can get to by going underneath this video, finding the little black circle that says Hillbilly Cat History. It's got a gold cat on it, or the outline of a gold cat anyway. Click it. You're going to go to the channel. It's going to give you choices. Videos, lives, shorts, posts. In this case, you want to go to videos and you want to look for Elvis's Jewish neighbors. I don't remember the exact title, but it's about Elvis's upstairs Jewish neighbors. And Linda says that she has watched that video. I hope you like that one too, Linda. And others, maybe you're here for the first time. This is your very first time to see a Hillbilly Cat History video. I invite you to head over into the channel and to what I call the archive. And I communicate through all 4 of those methods. And you can start anywhere in the archive. But we do have some mini series going on, like this one, about karate. And Sherry Pula, the girl on the left, she says, my recollection of the concert is that it was past my bedtime, so I fell asleep. And she was 6 years old. But she went to an Elvis concert, and she could not keep her eyes open. She fell asleep. And Linda says she did like the video about Elvis's upstairs neighbors. So to all of you that haven't seen it, there's a good recommendation for you. It's not just me saying it. Now, Beth, the woman on the right, Sherry's sister, she says after the concert, we all hung out with Elvis at his pit house. When we met a shy Lisa Marie for the first time, Elvis gave us some of the scarves that he threw out into the audience. He kissed us, and we hung out with him as we saw dozens of screaming fans from a bird's eye view. 14-year-old Beth, she remembers the scarves. She remembers dozens of screaming fans. And she remembers Lisa Marie. Whatever hotel Elvis was staying at this moment in time near Disneyland in Anaheim, California, he had the penthouse. And 14-year-old Beth, probably first time she'd ever been in a penthouse. I don't think I've ever been in a penthouse, to tell you the truth. So Beth got one up on me for sure. And Elvis was right there with them, and he gave her scarves. Her and her sisters and her brothers, I'm sure. I'm sure her brothers were there. And Linda says that she watches the channel even when she's not able to catch the lives. Thank you so much, Linda. Truly appreciate all of my loyal and faithful viewers. I know I've got not as many as other channels, but the ones that I do have, they are so wonderful. And I do appreciate you guys each and every day. And one summer afternoon, a couple of years later in 1974, and it doesn't seem like quite 2 years later, because the concert was in 73, and this is summer afternoon 74, so it's more like a year later. But Sherry remembers that she was 8, and Beth remembers she was 16. So I think their birthdays happen to fall in here somewhere where they either don't quite remember the right age, or just the way their birthdays fell left them at 8 and 16 on this summer afternoon in 74, when Elvis pulls into Ed Parker's home driveway in a black limousine. And Gunn says that at a time, Elvis stopped giving scarves, and she wonders why. There's a lot of stories about scarves, Gunn. and the Colonel enters into some of them. I'm not sure the period exactly that you're talking about, but Elvis kind of started the scarves as a lark. Like, they didn't plan to do it. And these scarves that he wore at the time were like $30 a piece. So it got to be really expensive. And he needed more scarves, and they just kept ordering more of these $30 plus scarves, which was very expensive at the time. I don't really know the real price. Saying this off the top of my head, they were expensive. The Colonel figured out a way to get them to purchase the scarves from overseas. He knew some Japanese guy. And the Japanese guy apparently was able to source, I believe out of China, these scarves, these silk scarves. And he could get them over to shipped all the way to the Colonel for something like 10 cents a piece or something. It was really low. And the Colonel turned around and sold them to Joe Esposito or whoever was purchasing the scarves for Elvis. And the Colonel sold them at twice the cost, at least according to the stories I've told. So these are stories we would need to dig into to see if these are true or these are part of the myth. But I'm telling the myth right now, which is that the Colonel doubled his money on these scarves, but there ended up being an issue because customs refused to let the scarves come in. And I can't remember if it's because they had a tag that said made in China or something. They either had a tag or they didn't have a tag. I think they did not have a tag they were supposed to have in order to get through as a piece of clothing through customs. So the guy who had bought it all, he had to like set up a little mini factory where somebody, like he hired ladies to sew these little labels in. And the Colonel still got these really cheap. And then he still sold them over to Elvis. But that's kind of the story of the scarves. So one reason they might have stopped is they just got too expensive for a while. And Pat saying that she thought he always did, but Gunn saying that she read somewhere that he stopped, but not why. And that's the thing. There's so many things that are written about Elvis. We've probably all read something somewhere along the line. So feel free to bring that stuff forward. We'll talk about it. We'll figure out if it's true or not. And Pat says that these girls are beautiful, which they are. Ed's daughters are very lovely. And Linda says that she would have liked a kiss or even a hug, but she didn't get close enough. And Gunn says she kind of missed seeing him giving scarves on some of the later shows. I think a lot of people, they came to feel that the scarves were part of the Elvis experience. And I have another wonderful story about scarves that actually coincides with the exact day that Linda Thompson leaves Elvis, that Ginger becomes the main squeeze, and there's an Elvis YouTuber who was there and witnessed it all and doesn't even realize that these things happened on that day that she was there. And someday I'm going to tie all that together and tell you guys that story. But I'm just going to tease you for this moment. And we're going to get back to Beth and Sherry. The day that he came to their house in a limousine, 8-year-old Sherry, she says, I was really excited. And I ran out to Elvis Presley's limo. And I rolled on his furry floors. So she jumps into Elvis's limo and she rolls around on the floors of the limo, and they're furry. And at first you might think Elvis had like furry carpet in his limo. That's not true. Elvis had regular Cadillac carpet or whatever brand of limo it was he was driving or in. That's what was on the floor. But he had something else in there. And Sherry says, I realized I was laying on dark brown mink. Elvis stops by their house that day, the Parker household. And we've seen pictures of Ed's beautiful wife, Leilani. And we've seen pictures of a gorgeous emerald ring that Elvis gifted to Leilani. And on this particular day, as he pulls up in the limo and Sherry rolls around on what she thinks is the carpet, but ends up being a dark brown mink coat, Elvis gifts this coat, which is an $11,000 full-length mink, to Leilani. And Sherry, who we see in the picture on the left, she owns that coat. She inherited it from her mother. And Pat asked if health had anything to do with stopping the scarves. I'm not sure that you would have to look closer into that. I don't know that he stopped the scarves. Gunn's saying that she's read that and seen it in some shows that he wasn't giving them, but those might have been larger shows. Like, I don't think he gave the scarves out on the tours as much because it was harder for the people to get up to the stage. He gave out a lot of scarves in Vegas and Tahoe, you know, places where it was a smaller setting and people could get close to him. Now, he still gave scarves at some of these larger concerts. He definitely did that. But I think there were maybe some where the security setup just wouldn't allow it. That might be part of what's going on, too. I don't remember reading anything where he specifically decided, or any of the guys mentioned, there was a decision to stop giving scarves. And Pat says about this $11,000 mink coat, OMG, he was so very giving. And he must have really thought a lot about Ed and his wife, as well as their family. You can see that he's treating the whole family in a wonderful way. And I think that tells us how he treated the families of his other friends. You know, we don't hear as much. We hear a little bit about the family of Marty Lacker, a little bit about Jerry's wife, Sandy. We've heard a little bit about, a very little bit about Alan Fortas's new wife, at least in 1967, when we're kind of following Elvis. In the other series about Circle G and Clam Bake. We've heard from Larry that when Elvis bought the horse for Larry, he bought the entire family, all of Larry's family, his wife and his children, outfits and stuff to go with it. So Elvis isn't just a guy with the guys. You know, he's a family man as well, and family is important to him, even before he had his own wife and children. Now, at this point, in the 70s, he's got his own child. He's got his own wife. Family's even more important than ever. And Beth, the lady on the right, Ed Parker's daughter, she says Elvis Presley loved bearing gifts and making people happy. So she's saying the same thing that Pat and Linda is agreeing with Pat, so that Pat and Linda are saying that Elvis loved bearing gifts and making people happy. And while he was there that day, you know, Elvis visited with them in the house, and he sang for the Parker family. And Sherry witnessed Elvis sing, heard him sing, watched him sing as she sat on his lap with her younger sister, Yvonne. So Elvis sang for the family while holding two of the children in his lap, two of the young ladies, 8-year-old Sherry, and so Yvonne must have been 6, 5, maybe. Perhaps younger. Not sure. And Sherry says it was the neatest thing to hear him sing in our large living room with great big panes. I thought the windows were going to break. Elvis asked if I was a good girl, and when I said yes, he gave me $10. So Sherry remembers their living room as being large. I wonder how large it was because she was 8 years old. And I know that the living room I always thought of as large was much, much smaller when I was an adult. But she also remembers the great big panes, which is a reference to the picture window. There is obviously one large or multiple large windows in this room. They're probably what was referred to as picture windows because they're big and you get a good picture of the outside. I grew up with a big picture window in the living room. I think most houses, that became a regular feature in most houses. But she thought that he was singing so loud and powerfully that he might break those windows. And then out of the blue, he gives her $10. And Sherry, the lady on the left, she even remembers what she purchased with the gifted money. She bought Tinker Toys and Lincoln Logs. Tinker Toys and Lincoln Logs were both types of toys that you could build things with. You constructed things. The Lincoln Logs, you typically built log cabins or other buildings out of logs. In Tinker Toys, they had round wooden pieces with little holes drilled in them that you could stick little wooden dowel rods in. And the dowel rods would be painted different colors. And then you could stick them all together into different shapes. So Sherry enjoyed creative toys. Elvis gifted Ed Parker a white Cadillac Fleetwood with a gold top, trim, and velvet interior. Now, this was not a brand new car. This was a used car that Elvis owned. Somewhat like with Kangaroo, this is a piece of himself. I don't know the history on this Cadillac, so I don't know if it had been customized by someone or gifted to Elvis. I mean, I'm sure it was somewhat customized, but I don't know if it was purposely customized as a gift. Elvis may have purchased this himself. Not sure. But when Elvis was in Las Vegas, the car was there, and Elvis said to Ed, "This car is cluttering up my driveway. Can you take it away for me?" And that's how Elvis gave Ed the car. "This car is cluttering up my driveway. Can you take it away from me?" And Elvis rode with Ed as Ed drove the Cadillac from Las Vegas to Pasadena, California, where he lived. Back to the house where Elvis had sang for the girls, brought the mink coat. And during this ride, Ed tells Elvis about his children's daily educational rituals. And Elvis wants to see these rituals for himself from what Ed tells him. And here's the way that Beth remembers it. "Dad told Elvis we attended church before we start school every day." Now, when Beth says that she attended church, she's specifically referring to the Mormon church, the Church of Latter-day Saints. Ed and his family were Mormons. So Dad, who is Ed Parker, told Elvis we attended church before we start school every day. He was intrigued and wanted to visit us. We were pulled out of class, and he gave my sister and me a big hug. When I went back to class, I couldn't even breathe. And nobody believed me that Elvis Presley was outside our classroom until there was a knock on the door. So Beth has gone back into the class and she's saying, Elvis just hugged me outside, and all the kids are saying, quit telling fibs to us, that you're trying to trick us. And then suddenly there's a knock on the door and Elvis Presley walks in. And Elvis says, I want to commend you kids for doing this and getting up so early. And I believe in Jesus Christ too. Take care, and thanks for letting me interrupt your class. So Elvis visited Ed Parker's children in church before they went to school that day. So Ed and Elvis must have been driving that car back awful early from Las Vegas. So this might have been like the end of the day for Elvis, because he normally liked to live during the night. So if they're here before the school day starts, it's got to be like 7 a.m. Maybe even earlier. That'd be about the time Elvis would normally go to sleep. So this does kind of make sense as far as the timing of that story goes. And Gunn's asking, he was alone then, no mafia guys with him? The story doesn't mention any mafia guys, but the story's being told by a girl who was maybe 16 at the time, and maybe she just didn't register that the guys were with them. It's also possible they were driving a different car. A lot of times, wherever Elvis went, the other guys would take cars behind him. And that way, if the car that Elvis was in broke down, they would shuffle him into another car and take off. They could leave the car, the broke down car. Nobody cared about the cars. But everybody cared about Elvis, and his safety would have been of primary importance. So they would have just shuffled him into another car and then took off and then sent somebody back to get or left somebody with the car, right? But it wouldn't have been Elvis. So my guess is, just for safety reasons, there would have been Memphis Mafia. They wouldn't necessarily have been in the car, and the girls may never have noticed. And Pat says he probably felt relief being alone for once. The only story I absolutely know he was alone in is the story that I have on the channel about Elvis meeting Mel Blanc, and eventually, during that same encounter, Roy Rogers. And of course, Mel Blanc's son, Mel Blanc Jr. Mel Blanc is the guy who did the voice for Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, Porky Pig, and a million other cartoon and film TV voices that you'd be very familiar with Mel. And the other guy, Roy Rogers, he was the king of cowboys. So that story's out there on the channel too. I know for sure Elvis drove alone to meet Mel. But I don't know of many stories after 1956 where Elvis goes anywhere alone. So it's very, very rare. And Gunn says that she too was thinking about his security, but they might be in another car. But then again, he's with Ed Parker. Ed Parker is security. You'd have to really be a fool to come up and take on Ed Parker, but there were probably people that were willing to do it. So maybe he felt like Ed was enough, but I kind of feel like there were some other guys in another car, probably following along for safety. But that brings us to the end of yet another episode. And we've still got some more memories from Sherry and Beth to go over. And then we've got some more from Ed himself. And we're going to get into the very end of both Ed and Elvis's lives. And we're going to do that in an upcoming episode, probably the next one. So I hope to see you guys all at that one. I do have another broadcast today where we'll be returning to the Circle G. Well, not quite to the Circle G, but there's a wedding involved. We're going to be approaching a wedding, finishing up clam bake. So I hope to see you guys there at 3 p.m. And until I do, you all keep on taking care of business, and I'm going to send you out with this song, which is about jewelry that Elvis gave to his last love, Ginger Alden. It's called Sealed in Gold.
In the hush of a Vegas night, he called her close, no stage, no lie. Slipped a ring on both her hands, no crowd to cheer, no wedding band, just love, just breath, just time grown old, a vow unspoken, sealed in gold. Two hearts caught in 24K, in peace, in quiet display. No diamonds loud, no eagles cry, just tenderness that doesn't lie. Worn near her skin, where stories hold a whisper of him, sealed in gold. My love, my love, my life, he wrote in chains a promise for through joy and pain, not just to give, but something whole, the myth, the memory, sealed in gold. No velvet throne, no final show, just gravel roads where true love goes. He gave her life, he gave her soul, and left behind a heart to hold. He loved my life, he wrote it in chains, a promise for through joy and pain, not just to give, but something whole, the myth and memory, sealed in gold, sealed in gold, sealed in gold.